So I've seen that the Catholic world has digested Pope Francis' motu proprio from last Friday. And what has come out of the reflection on the letter, I suppose, is the second to last paragraph of his accompanying letter to the motu proprio has something very interesting that is leaving Catholics that love the traditional Mass thinking of what happened, what's going to happen to us. And I'll just read that paragraph. Indications on how to proceed in your diocese are chiefly dictated by two principles. On the one hand, to provide for the good of those who are rooted in the previous form of the celebration, and the need to return in due time to the Roman Rite promulgated by Saints Paul VI and John Paul II, the new Mass. And on the other hand, to discontinue the erection of new personal parishes tied more to the desire of and wishes of individual priests than to the real need of the holy people of God. At the same time, I ask you to be vigilant in ensuring that every liturgy is celebrated with decorum and fidelity to the liturgical books promulgated after Vatican II. Remember, the new Mass was never discussed in Vatican II. The new Mass that we have was never discussed in Vatican II. It's the result of a working group afterwards. Without the eccentricities that easily denigrate the abuses, seminarians and new priests should be formed in the faithful observance of the prescriptions of the Missal and liturgical books, in which is reflected the liturgical reform willed by Vatican II. So, a couple of reflections here, guys, and everybody's coming to the sad reality that the Church has, the Pope, Rome, has, in effect, with this letter, with what the Pope is saying, has, betrayed the agreement, the Ecclesia Dei Agreement of 1988. When those priests from the Society of St. Pius X went to Rome and asked to have a canonical group that was recognized in the Church, had canonical status, was allowed to ordain priests, was allowed to say the Mass, they were given an agreement. And where does this agreement stand? Because from what we can see, there's a shelf life now on the traditional Latin Mass. In due time, are we going to have now in 5 years, 10 years, another publication, another motu proprio? From this day forward, no priest can be ordained in the old rite. From this day forward, none of the sacraments can be celebrated in the old rite. And Catholics are really stunned at this. I mean, I go to Novus Ordo Mass. I've been to a LGBTQ Mass celebrated in this diocese by a priest. The biggest charade I've ever seen in a Mass with no cross, with the rainbow thing behind it. I didn't know it was going to happen. Sadly, I won't go into much details here, but every single Novus Ordo Mass has a different flavour, because every Mass is a performance. The priest has to perform to us. He has to make eye contact with us. Do you ever go into a Mass and the priest is there? He's, instead of reading the rite, he's there looking at us and this is my body which will be given up for you, and he's looking at us and moving the Eucharist around. The different ways the different priests will celebrate the Novus Order in different parishes. It's how am I going to make the Mass interesting today, and how am I going to make it so that people are not bored, and the homily, and instead of educating us to understand that the Mass is the worship of our Lord Jesus Christ. It is where we go to encounter Christ in the Eucharist, in the most sacred element of our faith. Why are we not educating our kids, catechizing our kids about the Eucharist from a younger age? The program that we've had, the religious instruction program we've had in Ireland, if you want to produce an atheist in Ireland, send them to a Catholic school. That's simply it. You know, Irish Catholic Directory 2021, 90% of baptized Catholics, because we know these are the figures that the bishops report. 90% of baptized Catholics do not go to any mass in Ireland. 90% of baptized Catholics do not go to any mass. 99% of baptized under 18 years old do not go to any mass. Those are the statistics. That is the crisis in the church. You know, I can go to Dublin and go to a Greek Catholic service, a Greek Catholic divine liturgy, or I could go another place, and the church would not say anything to us. They would not. Now, those Greek Catholics that are in Dublin, we have to put an expiry date on when they'll be celebrating their liturgy, because, you know, at due course we need to return to the Novus Ordo here, and we need to get rid of all of that, because, you know, or the Maronite liturgy, or the Coptic, the different rites in the church. This is what Archbishop Lefebvre warned us about. Archbishop Lefebvre was saying this, that the liturgy what has happened now in the Vatican. Archbishop Lefebvre was saying for years, how is it possible that the Mass of all ages, the Mass that's been celebrated for hundreds of years, the Mass ad Orientem, suddenly is something evil, bad, and so forth? That there are some people questioning Vatican II. I mean, that's life, that's the church. But we have a lot of problems in the church. That there are some people questioning the Bible. That's the biggest problem. You have Catholics in the church denying biblical teachings. Do we realize where the real crisis is? You know, and I'm here not opening up a discussion on Vatican II and so forth, but the church, you know, if we deny the biblical teachings of Christ, and priests denying the biblical teachings of Christ, what is the future of the faith? So it's a painful time, especially for the Ecclesia Dei communities which were specifically told, you are safe, you are welcome, you will always be able to say the Latin Mass, you will always be able to ordain priests. And these communities organically grow, you know, because, you know, they grow, they don't have 1.5 kids in their families, they have large families. These communities grow, they bring other people to their communities. And the same way as I can go to a Greek Catholic divine worship and go to Mass there, why wouldn't somebody want to go to a traditional Latin Mass with the Fraternity of St. Peter? You know, it's if we think about it rationally, and we think about what's going on in the church, this makes absolutely no sense. And what the Vatican is doing is vindicating Archbishop Lefebvre. The church has vindicated him because he said this would happen. They would come after you. They would try to ban the traditional Latin Mass. They would restrict it. And it's clear from what Pope Francis is saying, in due course, the need to return to the Novus Ordo. How can the church say that after having an agreement with priests that came from his group, and now we're telling them, sorry, in due course, all of what your existence in due course has to return to the Novus Ordo. If the church wants to fix the problems of the crisis in the church, fix the problems first instead of going after Ecclesia Dei communities, after people who love the traditional Latin Mass, after people that live in grace. Because I can tell you, the majority of people going to traditional Latin Mass aren't going around saying, Vatican II this, Vatican II that. Not even the Society of St. Pius X at every Mass. You go to an SSPX Mass, they're not on about Vatican II the whole time. Some people think they are, but they're not. They are just doing bread and butter Catholicism, Mass, confession, great communities, beautiful communities. He wasn't an evil man. He didn't leave an organization that is evil, that is, you can take extremist elements from his group and say that's the extremist elements of the SSPX are not the SSPX. They are extremist elements, and you have them in every organization, inside and outside the church. So it's pretty sad that what has happened in the church, this focus on this group, this growing group, this group that loves the Eucharist, this group that is bringing the youth back to the church. We don't want felt. We don't want the guitars, 1970s folk music. Some of us do. I know others do, and that's fine. If you want beautiful Novus Ordo Mass, go to Novus Ordo Mass. Go to and encounter good worship there. If you want, just go. If you want traditional Latin Mass, go to traditional Latin Mass. But let's not kid ourselves, guys. The biggest problem in the church, the biggest problem, is the majority, the vast majority of Catholics do not go to any Mass, do not believe in the Eucharist, and do not believe in a whole rake of other Catholic teachings. Because we were not taught. I was not taught. We were not taught these things. And you wonder why the church is in the state it's in. I don't know where these communities are going to go. I think they feel very, very sore, very sad, very annoyed. They thought they had an agreement. I mean, the Fraternity of St. Peter, they left Archbishop Lefebvre. They went to Rome and they asked for an agreement, and in good faith, they accepted an agreement from Rome. Now what happens? What is the future for the Fraternity of St. Peter and the other Ecclesia Dei communities? Where are they going to go? What is the Vatican going to do next? Are we going to see another motu proprio saying all of the sacraments are banned in the old rite, but you can continue to have the Latin Mass? Are we going to see a motu proprio saying bishops are no longer allowed to ordain subdeacons, are no longer to ordain to offer the ministries, the old rite ministries? So we can see that there's going to be, where this is going. So at the end of the day, if we remember, Archbishop Lefebvre signed an agreement with the Vatican in 1988. And the reason that he stepped back from that agreement was because the Vatican would not allow him to have one bishop. They asked for one bishop to continue to look after, to be there to ordain priests after he died. He asked for one bishop. And had the Vatican given him one bishop, this would have been it. The society he would have accepted that agreement without a doubt. And we can see now what is going on there, because we see how badly they have been treated. Your Catholics being told to leave their parishes, that you can no longer have Mass in your own parish if you are having traditional Latin Mass in your own parish. Has the Novus Ordo given the fruits that it should have given it? No, it hasn't. But it could, it could. The reforms could have gone in a number of directions. Sadly, it went in the wrong direction. Today we hear about Reverend Novus Ordo. And we've even, in the Novus Ordo world, there's two types of masses. There's the Reverend Novus Ordo, and then there's the other Novus Ordos. The fact that, why are we even talking about Reverend Novus Ordo? And there are some beautiful, as I said, I used to go to Novus Ordo in Latin ad Orientem for many years. I thought it was beautiful. I encountered Christ there. It was a great way to learn Latin. Beautiful, beautiful experience for me. That's what I experienced, but that's a tiny minority in the church that actually have the reverent Novus Ordo in Latin. And I didn't know any difference. I didn't know the traditional Latin Mass. But that doesn't exist in most places. In most places, it's a performance. It's a performance. Every Mass is different. Everything has to, in different ways, different churches, different things. And it's not engaging the faithful, What engages the faithful are authentic men. And, to be fair, I prefer the traditional Latin Mass. So that's just me. My children do as well. The communities are beautiful. The Society of St. Pius X has beautiful communities. That's what I experience. I'm not going to deny what I've experienced. They're not some horrible people, they're not, looking down on us. They're as sad as anybody in the church to see the destruction of the faith. It pains the faithful that go to the Society of St. Pius X. It pains them to see the destruction of the Eucharist, to see the fall away of the faith, to see basic things that we held as sacred that are no longer sacred to many Catholics. The Eucharist was sacred to us. It was the source, summit, and centre of our faith. It was everything for Catholics. And yet most Catholics do not believe in the Eucharist, because if you believed in the Eucharist, you would believe in the power of grace and sanctifying grace and all of the other elements. So, because we don't teach these things anymore. And it's sad that the church now is going back, hammering a small group of traditionalists that love the traditional Latin Mass in the church, hammering them when the big elephant in the room, the big problems are ignored. And to be honest, all people are saying was, many Catholics in the church are asking the question, he was right. He was right. He was right. Archbishop Lefebvre, had, was ruthless in a way. He was, if you listen to him, he was contentious. And I say this in a good way. And you could say, God, it wasn't very charitable in some of the things that he said to about the popes and so forth. But he did do one thing. He understood the gravity of where he was going. He understood it was difficult to do what he did, to in effect consecrate 4 bishops without the permission of the Pope, to create a schism according to the church. But we look back now, and we see he was right. He was right. There's a reason this guy was formed, and he was made archbishop, and he was made nuncio, and so forth. There was a reason he was the head of one of the biggest missionary congregations. This man was extremely well formed. And then the church asked him, look, you need to go along with the 1970s style Mass. And they couldn't allow him to celebrate the old Mass. They could, if Pope Paul VI had just allowed one chapel in every diocese to say the old Mass. And that's all they could have done, allow one chapel so that the faithful could go to the old Mass in every diocese, in one chapel, given that option, just allow them, things would be so different. But the fact was, he was frustrated, and he wasn't the problem in the church. Archbishop Lefebvre wasn't the problem in the church. He wasn't running around sleeping with seminarians, bedding seminarians, covering up sex abuse, that we see. And people, we all know that there are problems in the Society of St. Pius X. like every single institution. And, you know, they have to deal with those things. But, you know, his focus, he wasn't a Father Martial type figure. He wasn't a McCarrick. He wasn't the one causing the crisis in the church. He wasn't the one that wasn't teaching the faith. So, you know, can you trust the authorities in Rome? Can you trust the men in charge to love and appreciate and grow the faith? Can we trust the leaders in the church? Yes, we should have obedience. Yes, we have to respect the canonical structures of the church. Yes, we have to respect the hierarchy, our bishops. But do they have the best interest of the faith at heart? Seriously, we have to ask those questions. Does Rome, did the cardinals, the McCarricks of this world, do these people have the best interest of the faith at heart? So, you know, the one man stood up. He was the only archbishop. He was the only bishop, Castromeyer as well. But in Europe, in America, he was the only person that stood up. And he was the only one that said, how can my mass that I've celebrated, the mass been celebrated for hundreds of years, suddenly be wrong, evil, you know, a sign being against the church, being against the council? He was the only person that stood up. And today, most people, most baptized Catholics, do not believe in the Eucharist. The fact that the most Catholics who don't go to Mass don't believe in the Eucharist is not because of him. It's not because of the traditional movement. We didn't cause that. The Society of St. Pius X hasn't caused the crisis in the church. And the church is now waking up and realizing, we are realizing this man wasn't the problem. He wasn't the one that was, you know, there is obedience and there is obedience. And, you know, if in effect, what our church leaders have done, what they have done is with under the mandate of obedience, what the church has done under the mandate of obedience is to destroy the faith in the Eucharist. That is what the church has done. That is what bishops have done. Mandating communion on the hand, removing the requirement to kneel, removing all these gestures, the way we received the Eucharist for so many years, the way that our children would have seen their parents go to communion. All of those, all of that teaching that we would have had, that we should have had, has been because of the way it's been taught in the church today. And it isn't his fault. He didn't change the way the catechism was taught in Ireland's Irish schools. So would there be a crisis? Would there be this loss of faith and so forth? Who knows? We don't know. But if we don't do it, if we don't teach our children the basics of the Catholic faith, if we don't bring them to Mass, if we don't understand the Mass, that's not his fault. The problems in the church are not his. The Pope did not need to issue this motu proprio to stamp out the Lefebvrists that are infiltrating the church. The infiltration is not the Lefebvrists. The infiltration is the Modernists. That is simply it. We just look around the church. The church awoke and groaned and found itself modern. That's really where we are. And many Catholics are now awake. We can see what has happened in the church. The laity are not sitting back anymore. Whatever happens, it'll take many decades or even centuries. There will always be the traditional Latin Mass. There will always be the connection to the liturgy of the Mass of all ages because of this man. There will always be it, regardless of how much they try to frustrate and annoy and destroy the traditional Latin Mass. And it's not because, it's not because I worship the form of a mass. I worship this, the beauty and the sacred aspect of how it teaches us about the sacred. That's what, I find beautiful. Because sometimes people accuse us of worshipping a form over worshipping Christ. We're more connected to, well, you want the lace and you want the vestments and the altar and the way the church is. You're more focused on the those aspects than you are on Christ. No, those aspects were given to us by our grandparents and great grandparents. They were paid for. Those churches, those altars, those altar rails, all of those, that way of worshipping was handed down to us. We were given that. Our churches were that. That was what we were given. And then after Vatican II, we were told to start removing those. Start removing statues, start removing altar rails, start removing side altars. And what were we given in return? Sterile worship? That the majority of Catholics do not believe in the Eucharist is the biggest crisis that has ever happened in the church. And we don't, and bishops and the Pope do not see this. They somehow think he is the problem, and his followers, and his society is the problem. I'm sorry. 30 years ago, I would never have gone to a Society of St. Pius the Chapel or read his books or listened to him. I thought he was schismatic. I thought he was disobedient. I thought, he was in effect, a Luther, separating the church, dividing the church. And at the end of the day, when you listen to him today, 30 years later, it's painful. It's painful to hear him. It's painful that, what has happened in the church, that he saw it. And he said, it's painful to see destruction of the sacred. We could have done one thing, which was retain the beauty, the sacredness of the Mass. I just find it very, very sad that we are where we are in the church. And many people listening to this mightn't understand it. There are some good groups in the church. There are some good Catholic groups. There are, these groups that are cocooned among themselves, that love the Novus Ordo. And I understand it because I loved it as well. And I still encounter Christ there. I cannot deny that. When it's said, you can say it reverently, you can say it beautifully, and so forth. And you encounter the same Christ. Encountering Christ is a miracle in either form. It's not wrong. It's not evil. It's not bad to encounter Christ in either form. And there are groups that do that. And I would ask anyone who loves the traditional Latin Mass, don't write off everybody who loves the Novus Ordo. There are some beautiful groups in the church that love the Mass, that encounter Christ, that say the Mass very reverently in Latin sometimes. It can be done. There are some great groups. And, we have to come together as one church and renew the faith. We can't just isolate ourselves into our various groups. This group doesn't want to talk to the Lefebvres, and Lefebvres don't want to talk to these. Believe me, we have to work together. We have to dialogue. We have to talk. But all I would say, the SSPX, maybe a minority, but he wasn't wrong. Not when we see this letter. What we've seen is the traditional Latin Mass now has an expiry date. That wasn't what the Ecclesia Dei Agreement said to those who left Lefebvre and asked for canonical status. They were never said there was going to be a sunset clause on that agreement. And this is a betrayal of Ecclesia Dei communities. And it's a vindication for Archbishop Lefebvre, who said this would happen. He said that to those who left him, that this would happen. And it is coming to pass under Pope Francis. There has been an expiry date put on everything that Archbishop Lefebvre tried to defend. So, I'm just thinking, it's not wrong. It's not, our missal, our our extraordinary form, our traditional Latin Mass, is beautiful to us. We love it. We have our missals. You know, Latin isn't beyond our comprehension. We can follow on and listen in Latin and understand every part of the Mass and be engaged at every part of the Mass. And to be honest, you know, I just find it beautiful. I just don't understand why is this fuss in the church that you cannot go to a traditional Latin Mass and experience the Mass that most saints experienced. It is beautiful. You can go to a traditional Mass and say, I am Catholic and I love the Pope, Pope Francis. He is our Pope. We can go there and engage with the Mass of all ages, engage with the Mass of the mystics, of the saints, and encounter Christ there. We can do that and not be, you know, causing schism and, you know, renouncing everything in Vatican II and so forth and so forth. You know, there's nothing wrong with theologically asking a question about a council and looking for, you know, answers and dialogue in the church. But, you know, somehow today it's become very problematic to the symbol, the traditional Latin Mass now is a symbol seemingly for Rome of rebellion. I don't know why, because I accept Vatican II. I accept the Novus Ordo as, you know, is a valid right. And traditionalists need to understand, for traditional people who don't understand, if you take the Novus Ordo missal as it has been, you know, given out, if you were to take that, it's mostly scripture. And the canon, you know, the Novus Ordo as it is not wrong. It's not something that you should ever call evil. And this is where I do take exception with some of those in traditional movement who view the Novus Ordo as you know, they call it evil. They call it, they disparage it and so forth. The Novus Ordo Missae, if you were to take it and go through it, is mostly scripture. And elements in that, yes, we can question, but it's mostly scripture, and the Holy Scripture, you can never disparage it. You know, the consecration is the same consecration as in the Vetus Ordo, hoc est enim corpus meum quod pro vobis tradetur, which is said in both rites. So we need to be very careful. We should never disparage the Novus Ordo. The problem is not the text, the rite. The problem is how it's said, and everything that was never discussed in Vatican II, such as removing altar rails, communion on the hand, turning to the people, destroying our altars, destroying our places of worship, etc., etc., etc. All of the things that have been added on, bolted on, and so forth. The destruction of catechesis, the nearly practical destruction of the confession, all of these other elements that have come in there too, actually we have eclipsed the Eucharist, because now no longer is the sacrifice of the Mass what we should be focused on. We're focused on man-centered, priest-centered, man-centered worship. The priest will perform it to us. No. That's not how the Mass is said. The priest says the rite. He offers the sacrifice of the Mass, and we witness Christ present in the Eucharist. And many priests don't understand this, sadly. So I'm not here to disparage anything. I'm asking that, you know, those who are traditional, please don't disparage the Novus Ordo. If, you know, the missal itself, the text itself, is not evil. Sorry to say, you know, and that's some traditionalists view it that way. Some even say that the Eucharist isn't even that our Lord isn't even present in the Eucharist. You know, we if we're going down that rabbit hole, where do we end? We have to reform. We have to renew the Eucharist. We have to, you know, return. And, you know, at the end of the day, Archbishop Lefebvre called out what is happening. He called it out. You have to study his life. Please pick up his autobiography. Please read him. Listen to him. Listen to his talks. Listen to his videos. Because a lot of what he's saying has come to pass. He is prophetic. He is prophetic. You know, he is. And the church knows this, and Rome knows this. We all know this now. More and more people are coming to the realization that Archbishop Marcel Lefebvre was prophetic. And I'm not a Lefebvrist. You know, I don't often go to their masses. You know, I just know, there's a sensus fidelium. And if you think about it and meditate it, he was prophetic. And at the end of the day, what was he asking of the church? That we didn't lose the centrality of our faith. That, you know, our faith is the true faith. That's what we believe as Catholics. It's not the privileged path that some bishops talk about, the privileged way. Christ is the way, the truth, and the life. You know, the Catholic faith is the true faith. Catholic Church is the true church. And it's not wrong to say that. And you can say that without, you know, accepting Vatican II, because, you know, the Vatican II didn't actually go and pronounce any new dogmas. You know, sometimes the bad interpretation of Vatican II leads to the concept that all religions are the same, blah, 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 and, you know, Muslims do this and Hindus do this and so forth. You know, I don't know if as Catholics we're obliged to believe how others believe or what way they believe, but, you know, we are taught to believe, you know, our faith is the true faith. And if we don't, if that's no longer the case, then, you know, Archbishop Lefebvre was right. And it's uncomfortable to talk about this. People don't like it when I talk about it. And as I said, I'm not defending. I'm just stating it's, you know, he said all of these things would come to pass, and they have come to pass. So where do we go from here? Long talk, I know, but, you know, I just thought I share some of my thoughts on this. You know, I love the faith. I think it's a tragedy what's happening in the church today. You know, for a small community that loves the Eucharist, you know, I think the Pope and those in charge in Rome could have got up and gone to the peripheries and gone to Icon or gone to, you know, a community, a society of St. Pius X community, and talked to the faithful and dialogued with them. You know, just go. They're not evil. They really aren't. They're just Catholics they're probably the best, some of the best Catholics I've ever known. The nicest families I've ever known are Society of St. Pius X Mass-going Catholics. Beautiful communities. Beautiful. You know, people can, you know, you appreciate them. You appreciate, you know, their life and how they operate and so forth. And it's beautiful. You know, are they perfect? Are they all saints? Are their priests perfect? Is their formation perfect? No, I don't think so, that you're going to find perfection anywhere. I just, you know, they strive, they try, they make an effort, they focus on the right things. You know, when in our parish here, we, you know, rarely get adoration, where Summorum Pontificum practically never arrived. I doubt it'll arrive now. When we're focused on so many other things instead of, okay, getting one thing right, which is the Eucharist, you know, basic Marian devotions. If we got those two things right in the church, if we put the Eucharist and we focused our catechism, our catechesis, our worship, our way of treating the Eucharist, if we focused in on that, if we got the basics of our faith right, and we understood who Christ was in the Eucharist, and we were able to teach our kids this, how different would the church be? Instead, you know, Christ has been eclipsed. And when we don't have that engagement with Christ now in the church, you know, the faith will struggle to be renewed. So let's see where we're going. And I just think it's a sad situation we're in, but you know, I think it's dividing more the church more than anything else, because if Rome thinks that Archbishop Lefebvre and his followers are just going to die away and go away and close shop, and you know, what are they thinking? And the reality is many Catholics are, you know, looking at what he did, what he said, why he did what he did, because he just didn't wake up one morning and start ordaining bishops. He did this because he saw what was coming and what has come to pass. Can you trust Rome? Can you trust Rome to be faithful to agreements that they made? It doesn't seem so with what's happened last Friday and that most proprio. There's an expiry date on the traditional Latin Mass. That was never the agreement back in 1988. And yet now it is. You know, the church, let's hammer these, let's get rid of it. You know, cancel them out. Cancel culture has arrived to Catholicism. Anyway, there are many groups and in the church, and there are some great, vibrant groups. I know them. They're very beautiful, and I wish we would more talk together. But look, these are the times we live in. Anyway, God bless. Take care. Bye-bye.